Wonderful. Thank you, Carla, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm glad that you're sharing this time with me. I'm going to move fairly quickly. I want to get as much in as possible in the next 30 minutes that we have together. And then as Carla mentioned, after the presentation, we'll spend some time in Q&A. So if you do have questions, go ahead and jot them down. I'll be happy to answer them at the end of this session. You can follow me on Twitter at the Sales Oracle. And I want to just get right into the content. The secret to getting more sales. And this is something that I learned many, many years ago, in fact, a few decades ago, by a man called Zig Ziglar, the late, great Zig Ziglar. And I'm sure if you've been in sales or following sales for any amount of time, you would have heard of him. And he said something very simple, which I read in one of his books when I was just starting my career. And it has been a guiding principle for me ever since. And I would say right now it is the fundamental secret to getting more sales. And as you grow your business, the ability to sell consistently, to bring in revenue consistently, is going to be critical to your success. And I think a lot of people don't understand the amount of discipline that is required in sales, the amount of work that's required in sales. It's mostly psychological, but it is still hard work. It is still heavy lifting. But let's get to it. The secret to getting more sales is this. This is what Zig Ziglar wrote. He said, you can have anything you want in life as long as you help enough other people get what they want. And that's it. That is the secret. That's what sales is all about. Sales is really about service. We're out there to help people. And everybody is going somewhere. Everybody's trying to do something. We need to figure out where are people going, what are they trying to accomplish, and then figure out how we can help them. And that's really the key. I'm going to share with you 7 practical steps that can help you basically manifest this fundamental secret of getting more sales. And these steps are, number 1, to do pre-contact research. 2, tell better stories, ask better questions, get commitment, get broader agreement, influence the influencers, and then justify the cost. And I will just make one proviso here. I am really speaking to business selling, where you're selling something to another business that has multiple people who are going to be involved in the decision, and they're not going to make the decision overnight. It's more of a complex sale. It's going to take them some time to deliberate and come to conclusion as to what the best solution is, and they're going to have to spend some amount of money. This is not a $100 sale. It's more like tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars. So these are the 7 ways that we can manifest this secret or exercise or practice this secret of helping people get what they want, helping people go where they want to go. So let's get into the first one. Do pre-contact research. People's attention spans are very shallow, very narrow now. People are overwhelmed with information, and many, many people are calling on them. Everybody is distracted. So when you have the opportunity to be in front of a qualified prospect, you cannot squander this opportunity. Let me repeat that just in case you didn't get it. When you have the opportunity to be in front of a qualified prospect, do not squander that opportunity. You must make the most of it because it's becoming increasingly difficult to get in front of qualified leads. They're shutting down. They've got voicemail. They've got assistants. They've got the internet. They've got all kinds of ways of preventing salespeople to get to them. So when they do allow you in, you need to make the most of that opportunity. So do your research. Do as much as you can in terms of understanding who this organization is, who the players in the organization are. If they're a publicly traded company, you're going to have access to a wealth of information. You want to access that information, look at their financials, look at their shareholders' letters, look at the annual reports, things like that. But even if they're not, you still have to do some research. And the first level of research we want to do is industry-level research. So you can't show up today to speak to an organization and have no clue what's going on in their industry. In fact, more and more you'll see sales forces verticalizing, where they have salespeople who specialize in an industry because they have figured out that when a sales professional shows up to talk to someone else, and that sales professional has expertise in their industry, they are taken much more seriously. They're seen as a trusted advisor. And one of the ways that you can simplify your analysis of an industry, I think one of the simplest ways, is to use a gentleman by the name of Michael Porter. He is a business lecturer at Harvard Business School and developed this about 30 years ago. And it has stood the test of time. What I like about it, it's a vehicle for analyzing industries. What I like about it is it's simple. And salespeople need things to be simple because we're always moving. We have a lot to do. We have to move quickly. We can't get bogged down. So here's a very simple model. It says this. Every industry is impacted by 5 forces. These 5 forces reduce the profitability of the industry. To the extent that the players in the industry can withstand these 5 forces, they will be more profitable. The first force is industry rivalry. This really is direct competition. The more direct competitors there are in an industry, if an industry is highly fragmented, then it'll be a less profitable industry than an industry. Clearly, if it's a monopoly, there's only one player that's going to be highly profitable. If it's an oligopoly, where there are a few large players, it's going to be much more profitable than if it's an industry that's populated with entrepreneurs. That's going to be a very unprofitable industry. So look at rivalry. How many players are there? How intense is the competition between the players? Now, the players in the industry, they are preoccupied with rivalry. They're constantly looking at what their competitors are doing and trying to match or outwit their competition. And many times they take their eye off the ball as far as these other 4 forces are concerned. They don't see these other 4 forces as competition. And if you're able to do your industry analysis and get a sense of how these forces impact the industry, when you show up to talk to that business person that you're selling to, you really will be a source of a wealth of information. So the other force is potential entrants. These are basically new players that can come into the industry. You want to look at barriers to entry. If barriers to entry are high, it's going to be difficult for new players to come in. The industry will be more profitable. The other is potential substitutes. These are solutions that exist outside of the industry. So as an example, the airline industry, you've got airlines that compete with each other. They also have to compete with technologies like what we're using today. So there's a lot of technology now that will allow people to have face-to-face meetings, and they don't have to get on a plane. So this would be considered a substitute. So to the extent that players in other industries can satisfy the same needs as the industry is trying to satisfy, then there are high potential substitutes. There'll be less profitability in the industry. Seller power is the fourth force, and to the extent that there are a few suppliers to the industry, then those suppliers can dictate their pricing and their service levels, and the industry will be less profitable. And finally, buyer power, customers. To the extent that there are few buyers, and those buyers can dictate pricing and dictate service terms, then the industry will be less profitable. So when you're analyzing the industry, looking at it in these 5 buckets and being able to talk to your prospect intelligently about your observations of the industry, that's going to really make the meeting a much higher quality meeting for you, and you're going to be seen as more than a salesperson or more than a vendor, more like a trusted advisor. When you do have these conversations, you need to understand strategy and how strategy plays out inside the organization. And so we look at this pyramid that shows how strategy cascades down through an organization. It starts with their mission. Why do they exist? Then their core values. How are they going to show up in the world? What will they not do? And they operate within these core, they're going to achieve their mission within the framework of these core values. Within the framework of these values, they cast a vision. What will the company look like in 5 years, in 10 years, based on our mission and within our core values? Within that, then, there have to be critical success factors, things that they must get right. And the different rivals will have different critical success factors. Some will completely dominate in terms of customer service. Others might be champions in terms of marketing capability or operations capability. There's a trade-off. They have to pick and choose. They can't be excellent at everything. And so you want to understand what they have chosen as their critical success factors. Then how will they measure their success? And more they're looking at balanced scorecards where they don't want to achieve high levels of profitability at the expense of employee morale, for example. So they need to make sure that they're balancing that their metrics balance. And then all of that cascades down into strategic initiatives. These are usually 1 to 3 year initiatives of things that they must get right, and those break down into 90-day objectives, and then ultimately into personal objectives. Again, you can have anything you want in life as long as you help enough other people get what they want. And the strategy is showing you at a collective, at a corporate level, what the organization is trying to achieve. And what you want to do is look at your value proposition and align it with that corporate strategy. And that's how you're going to be perceived as a valuable contributor. You also want to align it with the personal objectives, understanding the human being that's in front of you and what they're trying to achieve. And then how can you help them do that? And when all of these things align, that's when they're able to achieve their strategic outcomes. And you want to understand what those strategic outcomes are so that you're positioning yourself to help them do that. Ultimately, your value boils down to a trade of money. So the reason I'm going to give you $1 or $1 million or anything in between is because when I give you that dollar, I can see how I will get much more money back. In fact, I'm laughing to myself because I'm thinking of the WhatsApp acquisition by Facebook. I've seen WhatsApp. I've had people encourage me to download it. In fact, I think I have it on my phone. And I saw that I can have it free for a year, and then after a year I pay 99 cents. And I'm unwilling to pay WhatsApp 99 cents. I don't see the value. And yet here comes Facebook, and I think that the figure was $19 billion. And so value is really a perception. So clearly, as far as Facebook goes, they can turn that $19 billion into something much bigger, something much more valuable. But for me, I couldn't see how I could turn 99 cents from WhatsApp into something more valuable when I've got other ways of doing that. So you're going to find the same thing, that your value is going to come down to people looking at the dollar they spend with you, what are they getting back? And you need to understand your impact. Is it an impact on the income statement? So you're going to increase revenues? Or are you going to reduce costs? Or both so that you can impact the bottom line? Or does your value really impact the balance sheet? And you're going to be able to increase assets or reduce liabilities or in some way increase their net worth. You need to know. And that's how you need to position your value. Otherwise, I'm going to be looking at you and I can't even see why I should spend 99 cents. But someone else can take the exact same value proposition and it's worth $19 billion. So value is a perception, and you have to get control of that perception. So do your research before you show up so that when you show up, you know how to position your value and you know how to engage in a contextual conversation that really highlights the value that you can bring to the organization. The second thing, and Carla mentioned this at the top, is tell better stories. And I did do this in more detail, in more depth. So I'm going to just rush through it here. But there is a webinar on the Small Business Solver website that goes into how to tell stories more effectively. But fundamentally, the key is understanding this. Everyone tells themselves a story. And I love this quote by Patrick Rothfuss, who's an award-winning author. And he says this: it's like everyone tells a story about themselves inside their own head, always, all the time. So all of us are basically running and operating. It's like an operating system. We're all operating, living out the story that we tell ourselves. And that story is what makes us who we are, and we build ourselves out of that story. So when you show up to sell to your prospect, they're operating based on a storyline. What you want to do is you want to interrupt that storyline. You want to have them put it on hold and entertain another possible storyline. And that's the story of the success that you bring to your customers. And as they engage in that story that you share with them, it causes them to rethink the current story that they're telling themselves and maybe to rewrite it. And this is perhaps one of the most powerful skills of persuasion that we can develop, is the ability to tell good stories. Fundamentally, stories are about change. And that's fundamentally what people are buying from us. There's no reason to buy from us if they're not going to change. So we're going from a current state, and we need to leave this current state, either because there's a threat and we need to get away from that threat, or there's an opportunity in the future state and we want to move toward it, or a combination of both. In either case, the way we get there is to go through this transition state. And that's what you represent. You represent the transition state. But transition is always risky. And so I need to see in my mind's eye how I will get through this transition state. And the way that I do that is through your ability to share with me how you've helped others through that transition state. Fundamentally, the part of our mind that listens to story is listening for contrast. And I think the fitness industry does a great job of presenting that contrast in terms of before and after. So, this is Bob or Jim or George, and this is what he was like before. Then he enrolled in our program, and 90 days later, this is Bob now. Well, I see such a clear contrast, I get it. And that part of the brain that operates at the story level is looking for the contrast. And once it sees the contrast, it can digest that, process that, and act on it. Fundamentally, the formula that I love to share is that action is a function of belief. Meaning, we behave the way we do because of the belief system that we have. And if we're going to change the way we behave, it's because our belief system has changed in some way. And storytelling is the most powerful way to get into someone's head and reframe their beliefs. I used to believe one thing, but then I heard this story, and now I feel enlightened, and I've changed my beliefs. Once my belief changes, my actions will change. So you don't go into an organization or meet with a prospect trying to get them to change. What you want to do is you want to change their beliefs, change their opinions, change their perspective. When you do that, it's easy to get their behavior to change, because behavior is a function of belief. Action is a function of belief. So the fundamental framework, and again, I'm not going to go through it in detail here. It's on the other webinar that we did for Small Business Solver. But for those of you who didn't hear it, just very quickly, 5-step process. You don't tell stories about yourself. That's bragging, and it's off-putting. People will switch off. And anything you say, people will discount, they'll discredit you. You tell stories about your customers. And you can brag about your customers all day long, and people will welcome that because they see themselves in the same shoes as your customers. They might be a customer of yours. And so they enjoy hearing you speak well of your customers. You want to introduce your customer as the hero. Then you want to show how this hero ran into a villain. The hero must be a person, and it must be a person like me. I often recommend to my clients that they start their stories when they're introducing the hero with 2 words, like you. Like you, Mary was also facing a decline in sales. And just by starting with that little phrase, like you, it causes the person to completely tune in, because we're addicted to story. We can't help ourselves. Stories help us navigate the world. Stories help us try out alternate realities. And so when you say that there's somebody like me, I'm all ears, because I want to know what happened to her or what happened to him, because it could happen to me. Then you introduce this villain. The villain can be a person, place, or thing, but it causes the hero's life to go south. And you show how things were going poorly for the hero. That, to me, communicates a threat in the current state. And it causes me to fully tune in, and I want to know now, how did Mary get out of this? That's when you introduce yourself. You're a resource to the hero. Then you show how together, you with the hero work together, and the hero was able to triumph and then experience transformation. When you go through this process, and at the end I'm going to offer you a free chapter in the book that I'm publishing in the next 6 weeks called Human to Human Selling. And there's a chapter on the hero's journey. And that's the chapter that I'll send you free of charge. I'll show you how you can get that at the end of the webinar. And then also I did a webinar, as I mentioned, on Small Business Solver's site that you can go into detail as well. So when you go through this process, when you tell stories like this, people come on an emotional journey with you. And that emotional journey causes them to rewrite the story they're telling themselves. It changes their belief systems, and it's much more, it's easy for them to see how you would fit in their world. In fact, they purchase from you vicariously by listening to what you've done with your customers. The next thing is we want to ask better stories. You want to be able to start a conversation with a customer with a quick hero's journey story, just so they get a sense of the kind of work that you do. Then you want to be able to ask better questions. And the questions you want to ask now, basically because of the story that you've told, people are much more open to you emotionally. And now they're going to get into an easier conversation with you. So when you look at this next slide here, to ask better questions, we see this tree of emotions. And Carla, I'm not seeing that yet. So tree of emotions. Because what we're after with our questions is to try to understand what they're trying to accomplish. So I've just told you about Mary. Now what's your story? What are the challenges you're facing? What is it you're trying to accomplish? And we want to understand their goals. Because once we understand their goals, we understand their emotional makeup. Because all emotions are tied to goals. And you can check this. The next time you feel very emotional about something, ask yourself, what is the underlying goal here? Because emotions are tied to goals. Emotions propel us toward our goals. They also warn us when we are not heading toward our goals. So anytime we feel bad, it's because a goal is being jeopardized. Anytime we feel good, it's because a goal is being realized. And so we can group our emotions really into two categories, negative emotions or positive emotions. And those negative emotions are really rooted in the fundamental emotion of fear. We're afraid we're losing something. And the positive emotions are really fundamentally rooted in desire. We are approaching something that we want. So we have what we call approach goals or avoidance goals. Most salespeople sell to avoidance goals. Said another way, they sell to pain. Find the pain. Well, you know what? That does work to a point. That if someone's in pain and you show up and you've got aspirin or you've got a Band-Aid, yeah, they'll buy it from you. But it's a very short-term transactional approach. If you want a longer-term relationship with your customer, again, remember, you can have anything you want in life as long as you help enough other people get what they want. And you really need to understand their approach goals. So yes, you want to uncover their avoidance goals, what are their pains, but more importantly, you want to get to the strategic goals. What are they trying to accomplish over the next 3 to 5 years? Because when you understand that, that opens the door to you to become a partner with your customer and to come up with creative ways of helping them get what they want, not just doing a transaction. So don't just go for the avoidance goals, go for the approach goals, but you want to start with story. Story kind of opens them up to you emotionally. Then you listen to their goals, and then you tell another story that's more specific. So you have a general hero story based on your pre-contact research that you feel would be relevant to them. You share that story in under 2 minutes just to let them know that you know what you're talking about and you can really help them get results. That will excite them. They'll want to engage with you. You then ask intelligent questions to uncover and discover what it is they're really trying to achieve, both approach and avoidance, but especially approach. And then once you've got that, once you've got the goal, you have the key to their emotional system. Now you tell another hero's journey, but this is very specific. Now you want to show very closely, very analogous to what they're trying to achieve, how you've helped someone else achieve that. And believe me, their emotional system will light up. The next secret then, or the next key, the next step, is to get the decision maker's commitment to perform an assessment. So these business-to-business deals are more complex. One person usually doesn't make the decision in isolation. So what you want to do is, once you've got that, you're meeting with the decision maker, you've got them engaged, they want to go forward. If it is a bigger deal, you want to get permission from them to go through the organization and perform an assessment. Have some kind of pre-built survey or assessment tool that requires you to go to the department heads that will be impacted by your solution. And you know what? Business is holistic. Everybody is impacted by solutions these days. So you just need to figure out how your solution can impact other parts of the organization. Get permission from the decision maker to do this survey, to do this assessment. You may charge a small fee for it. A lot of my clients don't, but some do, depending, because there's a bit more work involved, and the outcome is very valuable. This allows you to go through the organization, get to know people, and really understand the impact that you can have on the organization. As you're going through the organization, the next step is to get that broader agreement on the needs and the priorities. So you're going to go and you're going to meet with each of these department heads. You're going to understand how things happen in their organization, what's going wrong, how your solution might be able to impact this area of the business. And you want to get from them their perspective on what's wrong in the organization, or where the opportunities are and what the priorities are. And while you're doing this, then, I like to say this is effective discovery. So you're performing not just generalized discovery, but effective discovery. Because while you're meeting with them, you're building relationships with them, but the other thing you're doing is you're gathering cost data. What is this problem costing the organization? While you're doing your discovery, you want to understand the cost factors. So when somebody says something like, you know, this is something that really costs us a lot of money. You know, we are constantly missing our schedules. Okay, well, what does that mean? What does constantly mean? How many times do you miss your schedule? You know, what is the impact? Are there penalties that you have to pay? Or are there premiums that you're not able to charge because you're not able to put your invoices together in time? You want to break it down and get the relevant cost factors while you're doing the discovery. Because remember, we said earlier, people will give you $1 every day of the week if you give them 10 back. And what you're doing now while you're doing the discovery is you're trying to understand, what are the $10 that I'm going to give back for every dollar they give me? And so when they say to you, you know, we're not able to gather our invoice data quickly enough to issue invoices quickly, and as a result, by the time we do this, there are a lot of costs that we're not able to invoice for because we didn't know those costs were there and we didn't talk to the client, and now we have to send out invoices without including those costs. Well, instead of just accepting that as a generalized comment, we want to drill down, and we want to know exactly which costs, exactly how much, how many times does this happen, how many people are involved, so that we understand the cost factors. Then the next step is to influence the influencers. And you need to know the types of influencers for the deal or the decision that you're working on. There are different types. There's the decision maker, obviously. This is the person, we call them the economic decision maker. They're going to make the final decision. There's also the recommender. So this person may not be the final decision maker, but the decision maker looks to them for their recommendation. There's the gatekeeper, obviously, the person that's there to protect the decision maker from having to meet with everybody who wants to meet with him or her. The technical user is the person who's looking at compliance to make sure that if it's for example, if it's a technology, that it's compliant with all of their standards. But there can be technical users really with any solution, just to make sure that it fits the organization's requirements. The business user is the person who's actually going to use the solution. I should say the persons, many times multiple people. And then you have the inside salesperson. And this could be any one of these users or any one of these influencers that really loves your solution and wants to see you successful. And so they become the inside salesperson. And then you can have other people, they might be outsiders, but they're just influencers. They don't really have necessarily a stake in it, direct stake, but they can influence the deal. We want to map these different types of influencers on an influencer map. So you just want to take this map, and the x-axis you're looking at low to high influence. So how much influence do they have on this decision? How emotionally engaged are they with this decision? Anywhere from low to high. And then you want to look at the level of support for your solution. How supportive of they are your solution, for your solution. If they're very supportive, we call them supporters. And if they're not supportive, we call them blockers. So who are your supporters? Who are your blockers? And then if they're very influential, we say they're active. And if they're not very influential, we call them passive. Map your influencers here, and by looking at the type of influencer and the level of support they have for you, you can really figure out how you're going to move forward. And just a little key here, do not underestimate the power of your passive supporters. Because if you have an active blocker, it's very difficult for you to get to that active blocker. It's also difficult for your active supporter to work on the active blocker, because they both have a lot invested in this decision, and yet they have two different outcomes. If you win, the blocker feels like they will lose, and the supporter thinks they will win, and vice versa. But your passive supporter, because they are not so emotionally charged and so emotionally engaged, if they really are a supporter, they can be very influential on your active blockers and at least move them from active to passive. And that would be a great win in terms of moving forward. Finally, the last step, just before we do some Q&A for you, is to justify the cost. And I mentioned earlier, when you were doing your discovery, that's the time for you to be uncovering the cost factors. You'll use it later in the pursuit of the deal, but you need to gather it early. Because as you get closer to proposal time or presentation time, when they want to know, okay, how can you help us, they will become resistant to sharing financial information with you. But very early in the cycle, when you're there just to learn and understand, they will be very open. It's like going to the doctor and you have pain, and the doctor, you want to share with the doctor all the information that you have because you want a proper diagnosis. But if you realize now that, based on the amount of pain you're in, the price might go up, you might be resistant now to really share how much pain you're really in. So we gather the cost factor early. What we don't want to do is be trading blocks. The person's going to give you a block and you'll give them a block back. There's no reason to expend energy for a trade like this. Again, we want a trade of a factor of 10. If you give me $1, I'm going to give you 10 back. And so when they see what we can do for them, again, you can have anything you want in life as long as you help enough other people get what they want. So when they see that you can help them get what they want, they're going to have an emotional response to you that basically says, I can see it. I can see myself doing this. I want your solution. Just give me some ammunition to help me sell it. And that's what the cost justification really is all about. When you can show them line by line, these are the different areas of your business. We went around, we talked to these people. Here are the numbers they shared with us. I'm not making up these numbers. They shared these numbers with me. And, we ran them through our calculator here. Here's the impact that we can have. If you give us $1, we can eliminate these problems, or we can help you realize these opportunities, and here's how you'll get $10 back, line by line. This cost justification is great, but all it is really doing is supporting an emotional response, that emotionally either they're engaged or they're not engaged. The cost justification will really not sell the deal. It'll just give the decision maker the ammunition that he or she needs to cement the deal, to get everybody on board, to rationally say why we are going to do this. So there you have it. The fundamental secret, again, I'll repeat it. It's what Zig Ziglar said, and I read it some close to 30 years ago. You can have anything you want in life as long as you help enough other people get what they want. And that's all that's what we do in sales. We are here to serve our customers. We want to figure out what is it that they want, how do we help them get it, and we will be rewarded for doing that. We want to be a little bit more sophisticated, though, than we needed to be years ago. And the way to be much more competent at this is to do your work, do your homework up front, do the pre-work, so that when you do have an opportunity to be in front of a prospect, it's going to be as high quality an interaction as possible. You're not going to squander those opportunities. Tell better stories. People are awash in information. They don't need more information. If you show up with your slide deck and your technical details and how great your company is, it's going to go in one ear and out the other. You want to get to the heart. You want to get to people's emotions. And we cannot resist the power of storytelling. So once you start telling a story that's relevant to me, I'm all ears, and you have an opportunity to engage me emotionally. Ask better questions. and make sure that those questions revolve around people's goals. What are they trying to achieve? Not just their pain, what we call avoidance goals, not just what are they trying to get away from, but what are they actually trying to achieve, so that we can align with them and propel them forward and help them achieve their approach goals. We want to get commitment. So don't just try to sell to the decision maker. You need to sell to everybody that can influence the decision. But you need the commitment of the decision maker to say, yeah, this is important enough that I will authorize you to go through my organization and gather information and come back and share with me what you found. While you're doing that, you're getting broader agreement from everybody on what the needs and priorities are, and you're also gathering the cost justification data early in the process. You then want to influence you want to know who all the influencers are, what type of influencers they are, how supportive are they of you, and how much impact, how much influence do they have on the decision. Map that out and craft a corrective action strategy based on that. And then finally, when you do present your value, make sure that you're able to defend it, because people need rational data to support their decision making. They can't, you've got me emotionally, but I can't say to people who work for me or work with me, I just want to do business with Carla. I like her. I don't know what it is. There's just something about her that I really do like. I need to be able to justify my decision and say the reason we're going to do business with Small Business Solver is, and I can now itemize in a very rational way and very passionate way why this decision makes sense. It sounds logical, but it's really emotional. And we're giving them that ammunition so that they can present their desire or their desire to do business with us in a rational way. So I realized I went quickly, but I wanted to give you as much helpful information as possible. As I mentioned, I am publishing a book called Human to Human Selling. It'll be published. It'll be out on April 8th. And I'd love to share with you a free chapter. It's a chapter on asking better questions and telling better stories. And you can get that if you go to thesalesoracle.com and fill out the form there. There's also an opportunity to enroll in a sales training course if you're interested in doing that and getting a bit more assistance to really help you land larger deals that can really be the deals that will propel your company to the next level. And so much is possible in a small business when we have money coming in. So I'd love to help you do that if you're interested, but certainly want to share with you free chapter and also let you know when the book is finally published. So I'll stop there and happy to entertain some questions.
Great. Again, thank you so much. And we're going to just stop the recording, and I'm going to unmute everything.